Hey everyone, this is Gina from Fibers and Design, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you the second part of weaving a scarf and showing you how to take it from a short part to this nice long scarf. So in the first tutorial I showed you step by step what I did to create the design, the yarns, the step of the design that I did, and I came out with this really great design that's really textured and lots of loops and shape and color. But the problem I ran into is that it was just too short. It wasn't going to work and it was too wide. So I decided that I would weave some extension pieces to make it a really long scarf. So I immediately jumped on the loom and redressed it for two pieces, two panels. And then I realized, oh, I need more supplies. And we all know what that means. A lot of time back at the yarn store. The key thing here with adding the two panels is that I wanted to make sure that the original panel that or let's call it this the main panel, will be able to match to the second, those two panel pieces here. So what I've done is I've woven 1 inch of just plain weave so that I can at the end just weave these two pieces onto the new or the original panel piece. And because of this texture here, it will hide the connection. So unless you kind of fold and look into the panels, you're not going to see it automatically. So that's why I chose to use this kind of more fluffy and more textured part at the top, and then continue the pattern in more plain weave or whatever it is you like. As I continue weaving, I want to make sure that I keep up with the consistency of the design, which means I'm using the same yarns and same techniques, and I don't want to use anything that's too different. In addition to that, as I mentioned in the first video, in the warp here, you can see that I'm using this very sticky mohair. So I've mixed it on the loom with a row of cotton as well, but it's still quite difficult to manage when I'm just using it with a tapestry needle. So I've decided just to keep using the leashes, and I have two sets here just in case I want to extend the weaving towards the end. But for the most part, I think I'll just keep using it with the shed stick. So now I want to take a moment to talk about the design elements that I used in making this scarf. In order to keep up with the consistency, I'm trying to reuse the same yarns, but I still want to add some interest to them. So here, as you can see, I have this metallic yarn that I've already used, and I'm using this block of plain weave to help build separation between these two sets of texture, up between the metallic yarn and these lighter brown thin loops. Working with a neutral palette can be kind of boring sometimes, so I try to reuse this metallic colors from the loops and use it inside of the weft for this plain weave block so that it still is a bit interesting to look at. In addition to using these raya knots, and although there wasn't any raya knots throughout the scarf, I thought that it would still work because it was a similar pattern, kind of these long lines that it's creating, so I thought that it would be a nice addition to the weaving. What makes it different weaving these last two panels of the scarf is the ending, the fringe. So you want to think about how much yarn you're going to use at the end and what you want to do to the ends. So I kept it really simple here and I just tied them off at the end. But you maybe want to think about what's the progress of the design from your neck down that you're going to show. So as I designed this, I think I left roughly about 5 inches, and that seemed to be enough for the effect that I wanted. What I found to be extremely helpful was that as I was weaving this, I was weaving the piece side by side. So here it looks quite advanced, like the parts that I did. However, as I was progressing the pattern on one side, I was doing it to the other, and just to kind of see how much I liked the design or not, to see like what worked, what didn't work, and kind of developing the design as I went. And so here, this is the final, well, almost the final look of the scarf, but here I'm almost finished with it. And yeah, I really think it's so strong. Like when you see the work side by side, it's just really amazing. So yeah, I really recommend that if you are designing the piece, that you work on them together so you can see what it looks like. Now, as you're weaving, you may have run into the same problem as I have here. As you can see, this curve shape has appeared, and these edges are not staying flat or flushed. So what I'm going to do is this is a nice trick you can do. You can build up both sides, both ends, so that it stays leveled. Sometimes when the tension between the yarns, when it starts to loosen, usually the ends go first. In the middle, all the yarns kind of draw in towards the middle, and you get this kind of curved shape. So as you can see here, I'm just building up the first side here. Here I'm starting on the left, and I'm just building it up slowly, row by row, until it's flushed with the center. Once I have that flushed, I'm just going to go on to the next side and just continue building up this, building it up so that it stays flushed with the left side and the center. And you can just keep doing this over and over again. And if you do see that your tension is not so strong, you might want to try to tighten them up or just use this technique. You can also do other things to straighten out the weaving. For example, try dispersing the weight or the tension of the weft yarns by creating smaller sections of the weft that goes through the warp. So instead of pulling the yarn all the way through, maybe go halfway, beat down the yarns, and then continue on until you reach the end of the scarf or the dimension of the warp. So once you finish building up the two ends, you can just continue weaving as you like. This piece was more of a experimental experiment or design project that I was working on, and I really wanted to push the texture and things like that I was working with. So when I was creating it, with the loops, it kind of presents an interesting, not problem, but a challenge for when it's finished. And, these loops can come out and you want to make sure that they're secured. So I decided to go with some craft glue and just go behind them and just to make sure that they're secured. Now, I think that an alternative to this, of course, you could use some fabric glue, but if you're going to be using this scarf and it has the glue, it eventually come out. And so, I think you could also use like a back panel on it or something like this. But my idea for it, an alternative could be just sewing, when it's off the loom, to sew these in place and kind of just going back behind the loops. And because it's so textured that you won't be really able to see it so much. But you can go back in the back side of the weaving and help support the knots and the design by perhaps going in with a needle and thread and securing the pieces. Once I finished gluing the back parts or the knots on both of the panels, I let it air dry, and the next morning I was able to take the ends and tie the knots and cut them off of the loom. So the last part of this is actually connecting all the three panels together. And at first I had the idea of using a sewing machine, but my skills are still quite limited on the sewing machine, so I decided to just sew it by hand. And so what I decided to do is I pinned together those 1-inch pieces on the two panels. So I did two panels at a time. And I did that, and then I hand sewed them together along the closest part of them touching together. And there's me doing my happy dance after I finished putting it all together. Yeah, so this is the final result of the scarf that I wove on a frame loom. I think there's, of course, always room of things to improve, but I really, really enjoyed making it, and the journey of the progress of this piece. It took a lot of time, a lot of effort, and quite a few nights to get it done, but it was such an adventure to do, and I really encourage you to kind of explore different textures and different lengths and different ideas that you have for it. Now, the biggest problem that I could see happening, here in this part, I still am struggling with the idea of it being too wide and thick, and so I thought, okay, I can, kind of fold over the neck part and kind of alternate it a few different ways, but I still really like it. The only issue I think that I will have with this is the inside part. And I really like the idea of this being like a walking art piece that I get to show off and wear. And actually very warm, this piece, so I can't wait for the fall so I can just kind of wear it with something really nice as well. But yeah, it kind of reminds me of a throw vest scarf thing, but still art. And like I said here, that seam is hidden with the texture. And so you could use this for lots of different things. If you're using a frame loom, don't let it limit how big you can weave. Use what you have, and do little tricks that will help fool the eye. So again, weaving is art, and yeah, I really loved making this piece, and I was so happy to finish it. Wait, what about the back? Well, yeah, the back looks just as you imagined. I think with a lot of cups of black tea and milk, I'll be able to finish this in a few evenings, but for now I'm just gonna let it rest like this, and later I'll just sand in the ends, and with a sewing needle I'll just go behind them and secure those loops to make sure that they stay in place. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope that this was a helpful tutorial for you. And if you have any questions or suggestions for videos coming up soon on other weaving projects, please leave a comment down below, and I would really love to hear from you. I hope that this tutorial helped you learn how to make a scarf and give you some ideas for making your own. Anyways, I hope you all are doing well, and thank you again so very much for watching. Please take care, and see you in the next video. Bye!